Well, at first sight, it might not appear to be the most promising of days weather-wise, but I can assure you that photographically speaking, it's possibly ideal. Now, I haven't got a particular theme or topic in mind today. This is all about me going up into the mountains of Snowdonia, Eryri, for a long walk. But just for a change, I thought I'd actually just talk about absolutely anything that comes into my mind. Hopefully not too controversial, and maybe just get a few things off my chest. Well, first things first, it's like a blooming racetrack here in the mornings. It's not exactly conducive to landscape photography, but there's method in my madness. This is about a mile or a mile and a half's walk to get to the start of the incline. And I thought I'd do it in this direction because it's a bit claggy at the moment. And rather than be on the tops in the clag, I'd rather be down here doing the boring bit with all the traffic. Well, half an hour in the pouring rain, no pain, no gain, no rain. Typical for Wales, but that's why you get the beautiful skies and the fantastic scenery. I mean, look at that behind me now, that's the way the weather's coming, and that's what I'm going to get for a lot of the day, hopefully. So I'm soaked, but I've got the right gear on, decent waterproofs, everything's well protected from the rain. We'll talk about that in another video. I've upgraded my equipment quite considerably in the past year or so. I am now hopefully clearing the only rain of the day, and I'm going to be heading off sort of up here, tracking around up the Gliders, maybe Trevan, and coming back down the valley. Nice bit of sharp light coming through there on Trevan. Good start to the day, first one in the bag. Okay, the walk proper starts here, if I can get my breath, and it's going to take us over there for about 10 miles or so. Fantastic. I've said it many times before, but when I'm on these mountain walks and I'm quite mobile, I'm quite open to ideas like this one. Now, normally I wouldn't shoot telegraph poles and wires, but they actually work. They bring the eye down to the right very strongly and make the composition better for me. But normally I just walk around. Well, I walk up the hills obviously, but I will shoot anything and everything. I use probably more film on these trips than any other type of trip because I am basically doing a bit of the spray and pray, albeit with film, possibly 2, maximum 3 rolls. But here you can see quite a different image, guess the camera, but it's still mono, it still fits in with the theme of the day, and it still works for me as a standalone shot. And as you can probably tell as well, from 1 or 2 of the images, I've also got my little Canon G15 infrared converted compact camera with me, something I've had for 11 years now, and I've got massive value out of that camera. Best money I ever spent on digital equipment. Speaking of equipment, you know, there's quite a bit of equipment needed to come up here and capture this in terms of video. I mean, I use a simple GoPro, but you have wireless microphones. I've got the 360 camera with a huge 9-foot pole sat on my back just to get extra footage. And all the faffing about with little bags and batteries and cables and wind muffs and all the paraphernalia you need does sort of take it out of the walk a little bit. It does detract from the walk. If I was up here just walking, I would have a lot less equipment. And the walk could possibly be more enjoyable, but I would miss out on the memories of this walk. I wouldn't be able to relive it again in the past. People say you're not enjoying the moment, Steve. Well, I am. I'm absolutely loving it. I only record a few clips relatively on a walk like this. Most of it is the walking, but I forget how much fun I've had. I forget what it was like being up here. But with the video, I can look back on it in years to come. And indeed, I do look back on some of the videos and I enjoy it all over again. Long end of the telephoto zoom here, picking out last bit of wispy cloud blowing away between the mountains. Plenty of contrast. Again, simple and quite effective. You know, there's something else about
being out here, which I've mentioned on numerous occasions, but it always springs to mind when I'm out walking, is how good it is for the soul and for your mental health. I mean, I feel totally alive, totally out of breath when I'm in locations like this. They invigorate me. Everyone's different. Maybe you want to sit in the pub or go on a PlayStation. Whatever you want to do that makes you happy. As long as you're not bothering other people, who cares? But for me, it's being out here. I mean, I enjoy sitting down watching films and TV as much as anyone else, but it's got to be backed up by physical activity. The mountains, just walking around the block at home. My wife and I walk all the time, even if it's raining or cold. Just get a coat on, get the umbrella out, go for a walk. And I've yet to regret going on a walk. If I get wet, I get cold, I don't care. I've still got out, still got the fresh air. But I'll be honest, nothing beats this though. This is the pinnacle of being outdoors for me.
Definitely getting an improvement in the light here. This is a wide angle shot in the vertical composition, and I think it leads you nicely to the distant mountains in the background.
Now, timing. Oh, hang on, I've just come across a couple of very exotic looking mountain goats there. I wonder if they're related to the ones on the Great Orme. Judging by the size of the horns, I'd say they definitely were. Anyway, while I bother the goats, something you've got to get right with landscape photography is timing and light. Now, I checked the mountain weather forecast today, and it basically said that this huge big sail of a mountain behind me called Travan would be clear of mist, rain and cloud by about 10 o'clock. Now, it's 8:30 in the morning. Now, I've got to go up various, let me just point them out here, various peaks in the next couple of hours. Now, I don't want to be up there in that clag because I'm not going to be able to see anything. I mean, there is some fantastic rock up there, and I want this to lift. I don't want to get there too early because otherwise I'll be on the furthest peak, Igan, when it's perfect and miss all the fantastic rock structures up here. So, timing, very important. Very important to get your weather forecast right as well. Maybe I'll do a video on how I forecast the weather. Bearing in mind this is Britain, so when it comes to accurate forecasting, it's not an exact science.
Well, it may not be exact, but it is a good idea if you can try and predict it as best as possible. Now, I was lucky here. I have some light breaking through the remaining clouds, and obviously that gives vastly more drama than if it was evenly illuminated. So I do try and time it as well as possible, but the apps are critical to me now.
Well, still a bit of cloud up here. It is clearing fast though, and I think there'll be enough visibility to get the shots I want. Okay, a bit more low cloud than I hoped for. That's going to mean a bit of hanging around up here. I'm not at the top yet. I can still get some photos of the dramatic rock structures as long as I get close enough to them. But I think a bit of patience is needed here, and I'm not great at that. Oh, random fun fact. My surname, O'Nions, is actually Welsh. Okay, tricky stuff. Got to pick your way very carefully through the rocks. It's a little bit of a scramble, but as long as you're sensible, you get your feet well wedged in and you grip the rock and you take your time, then you'll be absolutely fine. Well, super spectacular light coming out now. It's clearing, I can see the sun poking through, and I've managed to get some shots of the distant valley, so all looking good.
Well, this takes me back to the point I was making about timing. This is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the clouds lifting and the light coming through. I didn't want it all totally blown away. If I'd been too early, it would have been all clagged in and I wouldn't have seen anything at all. I've got one here taken with the infrared camera as well, and that I do think gives a nice impression of what it feels like being up there. It's a little bit softer, a bit more ethereal. But the cloud comes and goes. It doesn't sort of lift and stay lifted at this time of day. It's still the morning. And here this light came through fleetingly. I had about 20 seconds. I grabbed the camera. I just had time for one frame, and I've got the sun there barely poking through, and it is quite, it's a bit Lord of the Rings, isn't it? But perfect for black and white, absolutely ideal. Took a little wander out onto the famous cantilever stone. It's actually a bit slippy than it looks. And yeah, again, the clouds settled down, but it was up and down like a yo-yo.
With absolutely perfect timing, as I approach the castle in the wind, it appears out of nowhere. What a magnificent and really spooky structure.
Well, I know I was patting myself on the back for timing it just right, but I'll be honest, I was probably about 15 minutes too late. I would have liked some of that cloud blowing through it and adding a little bit more interest to it. I'm not complaining. Well, I am complaining, aren't I? But I think it actually works slightly better in the infrared. It gives more of a spooky feeling, and that's how I felt when I was up there. But yeah, more cloud next time. Well, exactly as forecast, 10 o'clock. The tops have cleared just as I arrived, so that is perfect planning. Something that doesn't usually happen with me. Got some nice shots, and for a change, I actually brought my old 20mm f4 AI Nikon and shot about 7 or 8 frames with that one. And bonus points to you if you immediately said, well, Steve, how on earth does the F80 work with one of those old manual AI lenses? Well, it doesn't in terms of metering. Everything else works fine. You set it to manual. I took a meter reading with the zoom lens and put that into the camera. Shot away 45th of a second at f13, something like that. Everything will be in focus. And it did give me a much wider perspective than I normally get with the 28mm end of this lens. You see, that is one of the biggest drawbacks to the typical zoom lenses I carry up here, which are 28 to 200 or 28 to 300. They're often not wide enough. Now, I'm not a big wide angle fan, but sometimes you need more than 28mm. This is 20mm and it's far better. I've got that foreground interest in there. I wanted those rocks in there. It didn't work without them. So I often have this dilemma of what to carry, and this is just an iPhone panoramic. I do like using the iPhone, I'll be honest. I think it's a marvellous device for landscape photography in general. But yeah, that point about carrying lenses, and I'll be more about this in the future, which has meant I've revised my system considerably.
The rock structures on the glidders are just incredible. I mean, these make a great photograph in their own right. They don't need a bigger landscape. And obviously it's monochrome. I'm shooting black and white today, and they're just a black and white image through and through.
I mean, this really is a shot that has to be taken in black and white. You wouldn't get anywhere doing that one in colour, well, in my opinion anyway. I just love the tonality of it, and I like the harder contrast in that particular scene. But most of the time, I do prefer black and white while shooting in the hills. But at certain times, colour is beautiful as well, but you do need the right light for both.
Now, the next one is Igarn. Not the most scenic walk up there, but there are some great views from the top, and there are some nice rocks you can include in the foreground and get some lakes and valleys in. So that's where I'm heading straight up now. Probably won't talk to you until then, which should be most pleased about. Yep, see you at the top.
Now I've said it on many previous walks that at a certain point in the day the light is probably optimal, and I think it's about now. It's before midday and it's still not too high in the sky. Once it gets too up there, you're flattening out the shadows and the perspective. It just looks a bit washed out, and it is starting to go that way now. But fortunately, this part of the walk is a bit of a drag up to a mountain called Igarn before I get these wonderful views down the Ogwen Valley. So I really have got a sort of narrow window of 2 or 3 hours of probably ideal light. But then the cloud will build nicely. Now I can include more sky in the later shots. The earlier shots, I would exclude the sky as much as possible if it's flat and grey. But as you can see here, the sky now is looking magnificent. And there's still opportunities here, but I am sort of towards the end of the golden window.
Well, I was too self-conscious to be yapping away at the top of that last mountain because there were other people there, and I'm sure they don't want to hear me talking about photography. Anyway, whilst I was up there, I did utilise my 20mm lens. Now, I'm going to show you a quick clip of something I shot about 5 years ago. Just used the 28mm lens again. I'm wishing I've got a wider lens for a change, so maybe that'll be on the shopping list. So yes, I did recognise at the time that 28mm wasn't wide enough for this particular vista, and down here as well. What a magnificent scene we have before us. Yeah, wasn't enough, so I brought the 20mm. Only took me 5 years to get back up here with it, but I think it was worth it. 20mm's got a yellow filter on it, so has this one. It's actually got a yellow-green filter on it, which is very similar loses about a stop of light, but I think that extra width encompassed more of a sweep of the amazing Ogburn Valley and the major peaks, and I'm sure that is going to be the stronger of the images I took while I was up there. Now this is possibly the last point at which it's worth shooting images down the valley. They'll become much weaker as I get lower, so take a couple more frames, I think, with the F80, and I think I'll also pop off a couple more with the infrared. It's working pretty well now. Infrared, as I've said many times, does need decent daylight, decent sunshine, and that's what we've got now, so it's worth, oh yeah, punchy skies now, nice black skies, so not the best composition, but can't complain really. Well, I can.
Yeah, so this really is the sort of last chance to get dramatic views from up here. As you drop down, it flattens out and you lose it, so I'm very pleased with this one. I do think it's got the sort of textures I like in the rock in the foreground, and the clouds are just magnificent. They're not over the top, I've played them down, but they just set off the image perfectly. Now, bit of a slog down, getting hard on the knees now. Sun is getting a bit too bright and harsh, which is me complaining. Nothing's ever right, is it? But I know from experience when the best time of day is, and it's now past.
Well, almost back at the car. Well, almost back at the refreshment stop. I've got drinks in the car and snacks, but nothing like getting one from a shop that somebody else has made. Well, that was about 8, 9, 10 miles, something like that. About 8 hours, hugely enjoyable. 2 rolls of film, XP2 Super, rated at 250. Now, I did that because there's a lot of sunlight around today. And with XP2, it will tolerate a lot of overexposure, but you really don't want to underexpose it. So it's going to be plenty of shadow detail in there, plenty of meat to pull out in the post-processing. Hopefully some of those are good, especially the ones with the 20mm super wide angle. I really felt they gave me something I don't normally get. Bit of a pain carrying it, don't like swapping lenses, but there you go. So all in all, wonderful walk, sore feet, a couple of hours drive back, and do it all again next time. So thanks for coming along, and I'll see you again soon.